Now we're actually inside the software, it's a good chance to take a look at some of the controls that we can use. We'll look first of all at the navigation within the active window. So in this case I'm using a file I had open already which shows a screenshot of ArchiCAD. It's just an image that's placed in the model view. But very basic navigation. If we take the mouse, put it somewhere in the middle of the screen and just roll the mouse wheel backwards, then you'll see the view zooms out. If we roll the mouse wheel forwards, it zooms in. And like most other systems, if I press and hold down the mouse wheel, it does pan. So we can use this to navigate around. Quite usefully, the zoom, if you put the mouse on a particular point when you zoom in, let's go for the ArchiCAD down here, it actually zooms in and centres on that particular area. One other thing you can do with the mouse wheel is just double click, and that does what's called fit in window, and it basically takes whatever is on screen and fits into the window. There are some other things happening with the screen at the same time. The first one is actually, it's called pre-selection, and there's a couple of things happening. First of all, the mouse has got a little magnet attached to the arrow, which means it detects something underneath the mouse and it will select if we press the button. But before we select, we get this little tag comes up to tell us it is a drawing, what the name of the file is, what its status is, etc, etc. But what I'm going to do now is go into a new file completely and run through some of the basics of drawing some elements. So I've clicked on new, I've got the choice here of template files. I'm going to pick my own particular template file, keeping the work environment as the current profile because we've just set that up, so I'll just press new. So I'm now inside this new window, and I've set this particular template file up so it's got these 4 elevations to work and use as a bit of a reference. It just means when you're starting out with the software, you've got a good idea of where you are if you happen to get lost, if you've zoomed in or zoomed out too far. This view looks pretty much the same as this view way back here, but if we double click the wheel of the mouse, we know we're back inside this something like 34 by 34 meter grid, so we know that we've got some sort of common space to work in. We'll take a look at drawing some elements first of all and some of the basics of that. So first off, I'm going to grab the wall tool. Now once we've selected a wall, what we need to do is then look at this area of the info box that allows us to choose the type of wall we're going to draw, or the type of geometry we're going to draw. Any buttons you see with this little triangle on them generally means there's a flyout behind them, so if I give that a click and a hold, there's actually 4 options in there. So I'll start off with just a single straight piece of wall. There's then you can see polywalls, rectangles, angled rectangles, there's also curves and some other shapes as well, but if I just stick with the real basics. As soon as I click, a couple of things happen. First off, we get this sort of rubber band line follows the mouse, and this allows me to just click somewhere else and just draw a wall, but this wall's at a random length and a random angle. If I do another one, again, a couple of other things happening. First off, I suppose, is these orange guidelines, and these give us things like allow me to snap to the x-axis, to the y-axis, or even to 45-degree increments, and they're all labelled up so you know exactly where they are. So if I just wanted a random wall on the x-axis, I can snap the mouse onto here, give the mouse a click, and I know that that wall's exactly straight. But really what I want to do is start to introduce proper sizes, because that's generally how things get built. So if I snap onto the y-axis this time, the length right now happens to be 4551.7. If I move the mouse a little bit further, it's going to be something else. But if I know I want the wall to be exactly 4 meters, I could just type that in, and because distance is highlighted in bold, anything I type replaces what's in that field. And if I just press enter, I then have a wall that's exactly 4 meters long. At any time, if I want to check sizes or measurements, we can use the measure tool that's available from up here, or we can just press M on the keyboard and that activates measure. We get a little ruler next to the mouse so you know what's going on. And if I click and rest the mouse on the other end, it's important we just rest the mouse and not click. When I rest the mouse on the other end, it tells me the distance, the angle, and also the XY coordinate. So I can just press escape once to come back out of there. If I now want to introduce some different angles, so I'm not snapping to one of these guidelines, I can start again, and this time what I'll maybe do is choose, again, 4 meters, but this time I want to put in the angle. And there's various different ways you can do this, depending on what page of the reference guide you happen to look at, but personally I find the easiest way to move between distance and angle or any other fields is just purely the up and down arrow on the keyboard. So all I do is literally press the down arrow and type in, let's go 35 degrees. So we just type a size, press enter, and that drops that in. If I wanted to draw another piece of wall, but this time it's not with a distance or an angle, maybe I know an X and a Y coordinate. If I want to type those in, all we do is literally press X, and you'll see the tracker activates and it expands now to show the X field. And I could say let's go 3000, and then down arrow or the Y key, 2000. Press enter, and that drops that one in. And the next thing that's important once we've done this is taking the items back out if we've made a mistake or I want to remove them. So in the first instance, if it's a mistake, I can just hit undo and that takes these back out, or I can redo. And maybe this time what I want to do is select these two elements here. So easiest way to do this is, rather than switch back to the arrow tool to select, any time if I hold the shift, you'll see as I press shift the cursor changes, so I now have an arrow. If I let go, it's back to just the drawing method, it's just a cross. So press and hold shift, put the mouse over an element, and you'll see as soon as I do that, it actually pre-selects in blue, tells me some information, it's a wall, what structure it is, etc, etc. But if I click the mouse, it instantly turns green, which means I know it's actually selected. This orange thing is actually a guideline handle, we're ignoring them just now. So if I move across to this one, again hold down shift, click, it goes from blue to green, they're both selected, and I can just press the delete key and it takes them back out. I'm going to just draw another large wall across here to show something else. So this time, maybe rather than select individually, what I want to do is use a selection window. So I can do that, again hold down shift, this time just click and drag, and what you'll see is I get a centre line, and what that does is only selects elements fully inside that particular shape. If I go in the opposite direction, hold down shift, click, this time I get a dotted line, and what happens this time is it selects anything that is inside or touches that particular shape. And this is controlled by the arrow tool and this very first box in the info box. As long as it's set for the third option, which is not always the case by default, so you may have to check that. As long as it's set for this third one, you then get direction dependent selection. So in this case, left to right gives a centre line. If I go right to left, a dotted line. And what I want to do is pick everything up and just delete it. I'll switch back to the wall tool, and what I wanted to look at was just extending use of these coordinates a little bit. So I'm just going to draw as a 5 metre piece of wall. And what's important now, if I zoom in, it's important to look for the different icons that appear particularly on walls in ArchiCAD. So here I've got a little thin tick, and here I've got a thicker tick. Similarly, I've got a thick Mercedes, and there's a thin Mercedes, and these are telling me different things. It's specific to the wall because the wall has to have a construction side, and a construction side is typically what the outside face would be. It's not at all obvious at this stage because we're working with just a masonry filled wall. If we're working with a typical sort of composite cavity wall, then it's a bit more obvious because you would see brick on the outside and plaster on the inside, etc. But right now it's important that we can look for these items, and the importance of that is we need to make sure when we draw a piece of wall that we connect thick tick to thick tick basically. So if I draw another piece that's 2 meters long, what should happen is that appears as one continuous wall, even although they are actually two separate items. If I was to force this to go the wrong way, so press here, and what I'm going to do is change the construction side to this side, draw another piece of wall, 3 meters this time. Then what you'll see this time is that there is a break in the wall, and that's because if I select, once it's selected you can visually see a bolder construction side. You can see the construction line is on the wrong side at the top here. So there's various things we can do to fix that we'll take a look at later on, but it's just important at this stage to keep an eye out for these various different markers so you get an idea of what's going on with the geometry. But what I want to do now is just look at the coordinates and how we can extend them a little bit further. So in this case what I want to do is actually draw another piece of wall but leave a gap of exactly 1 meter from this end of the wall. So what I've done is rest the mouse, and again it's another one of these areas where we'd rest the mouse on a point rather than click. Rest the mouse on this point, and all I'm going to do is press X because I want to move on the X-axis. It has a number in there, 15920.5, and when I type in a new number it overtypes that previous one. But if I hit the plus or the minus key, what it will do is either add 1000 to whatever the previous figure was, or take it away. So if I add, it's going to go to the right. If I take away, it's going to go to the left. So all I'm going to do is press plus, and you'll see the number now updates to 16920.5. Press the enter key, and then I can draw a fresh piece of wall. But you'll see, because I've played with the construction line, it's actually on the wrong side. Now what I don't particularly want to do is move the mouse to the top of the screen. So because it's the construction line, I can just press C for construction, and you'll see that that goes through the 3 options. So you can press it as many times as you like, you're just going to get a sore finger. But we cycle it around so it's at the correct side, and then I just type in whatever my new dimension is, press enter, and that's it, finished. So we can do combinations of these. I might go this time X 2000 plus, Y 2000 minus, and then think, actually let's go another 500 plus from there to take it back up a little bit, and then think, maybe X will go 500 minus as well. And we can jump this around, we can add up strings of dimensions to get to exactly the point we want, and when we're happy with it, if we press the enter key, we can then draw a nice new piece of wall. So maybe we'll take it down there this time. Once we've done lots of little shapes like this, and we want to tidy the screen up, there are some other filters we can use to select things. Right now I've got just 3 walls, but maybe what we'll do is, let's select these. If I right click the mouse, because I've got something selected, there's a context sensitive menu, and under move, what I might do is choose to drag multiple copies, and I can just drag from there to there to there to there. And when I'm finished, I press escape once, and that puts them down. I then just click to deselect. But what I want to do now is select all the walls, but not these outside elevation markers. I want them to stay exactly where they are. So a really basic system with ArchiCAD is quite effective. If I use the arrow tool and look at edit, there's an option here to select all. Now that selects everything in the active window, so that includes the 4 elevation markers, which I don't want. So if I press escape, that'll deselect. If I now go to the mesh tool, there are no mesh elements, but never mind. If I go to edit, it gives me the option to select all meshes. So in this case, the obvious thing is I want the walls, go to the wall tool, go to edit, and select all walls. And you can see here it's a universal shortcut, Control A or Command A on the Mac selects all wall elements. And it's quite a useful way of just picking these up to allow me to delete them.